Thurston County Board of County Commissioners elected officials meeting for Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. It's 12:02 p.m. My name is Ty Mentor. I'm Vice Chair of the Commission. Commissioner Mejia is excused, our Chair. Commissioner Gary Edwards is present in the boardroom, and the County Manager Ramiro Chavez. And we have Jeff Gatman, our Treasurer, and Mary Hall, our Auditor, and Don Thunheim, our Prosecutor, and Gary Warnock, our Coroner. So we haven't had this meeting in a couple of months, so I'm looking forward to hearing updates from the crew. And the County Manager also suggested that if you have any specific legislative items you'd like the board to be aware of, make sure to highlight those, because we get inundated with a long list it's hard to keep track of. Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell joining, and Sheriff Snaza. And Sheriff, we're just introducing the topic, which is kind of updates of your group, but also if you have any legislative items you want us to track, let us know about that too. Okay, well, let's go ahead. I'll just start with my upper left corner. Coroner Warnock.
Hey, everybody. Let's see, just an update here. We plan to have our first ever annual report with cases that were investigated last year, and you will be astounded when you see the number of overdoses. I don't know, it's a lot of numbers. So just be prepared for that. We were able to fill our autopsy tech position. So I appreciate that and the funding that was provided. We're still having difficulty finding applicants for the forensic pathologist position. It's been posted for 2 weeks, and I think it's been reviewed 450 times. And the comments that I'm getting from the community of forensic pathologists, they're very unfavorable comments. So, and it's basically the salary range is way too low. Kitsap County is our closest comparable county, and they're paying that pathologist $249,000 and change each year. So we're way behind that mark. And so right now, in my budget for this year, we were allotted $50,000 for autopsies, and I'll probably spend that by mid-February. So I just don't see the position getting filled anytime soon unless there's a salary adjustment in what was proposed by HR. Other than that, I'm down 2 people. One is COVID related, and I had a investigator resign at the beginning of this month. So instead of 6, I have 4 with 1 at home on COVID. So now I just have four investigators running a 24/7 operation with a lot of overtime.
Hey, Gary, I didn't hear you say what that number was for the ODs,
Yeah, we won't get those finalized. Hopefully, we still have probably 20 or 30 that are still pending toxicology reports. So that should all be compiled by March.
Any other? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, it's good to see you. See your face. Good to see everybody's faces today. So on what you were just talking about, the coroners have a bill right now going through the legislature to fund a study to deal with the forensic pathologist shortage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that bill, there's a national shortage right now, and Washington State is seeing just a decrease in practicing pathologists. So King County and Snohomish County, they were doing casework for the eastern side of Washington State. So those counties would transport their cases to King and Snohomish counties But because of staffing issues with those counties, they're not accepting any of those cases. And there are no pathologists that are traveling east of the mountains. So we have no idea what they're doing east side of the Cascades.
So even though that's just a study, can I assume you're supportive of that bill?
Yes, definitely. It's a J1 visa. So there was like 30 visas that were opened up, and they gave us one. It's a J1 visa, so we can hopefully bring someone abroad who would want to practice in Washington State.
Other questions for the coroner?
At what point, Gary, are you gonna have to say, well, we just won't do an autopsy on this one or that one?
We won't. We can't.
How much, Gary, do you attribute this to fentanyl? I assume one of the sheriff's talking points might be the increase in what we're seeing in fentanyl in the county. He and I just attended a meeting a week or so ago where we got a report from our local drug unit that fentanyl is really, really on the rise. Is that part of what's going on out there, do you think?
Definitely. A majority of our overdoses are fentanyl laced with heroin, methamphetamine. Yeah, you name it. It's pretty much popping up in all the substances that are out there being used.
Okay, thanks, Gary. That's a lot of good updates. Let's go to you, John, prosecutor's office.
My biggest stress and challenge right now is the backlog of cases that have, accumulated during the court shutdowns and COVID. Unfortunately, we're in another period of suspended jury trials. The court really had no choice but to do that, given the Omicron prevalence and the case numbers that were coming on. Judge Wilson will probably speak more to that. But on the positive front on that, if I have read my emails right, I think the board gave approval for us to move forward with at least our starting hiring process. Fortunately, I already had a recruitment in place for a lawyer. And so I've just expanded that, and we might be able to make that hire much more quickly than we might otherwise would have had we not had that recruitment already going. And so when that happens, I'll have one lawyer that'll start to be dedicated solely to working through that backlog and trying to essentially prioritize, triage cases and get them into the system, or perhaps get them into a diversion program, something like that. It's a very, very preliminary start. I fully expect that all the justice partners will probably be back to the board here in several months to talk about, you give an update and talk about what more might be needed to do that. But I at least appreciate being able to get started. The county manager, I know, was hearing a lot of my stress when I would meet with him and talk about how the virtual pile of cases was continuing to grow. But I feel a little bit better that we've got a strategy in place and we're getting at least a little bit of a start on it. More to come on that. I also expect that there will be some additional Blake funding bills coming through. I presume that Thurston County as a whole would probably support that, given the impact that Blake has had on us. And that's also contributed to our backlog of work because we continue to have to, process those cases as well. But I feel much better about that because that really is going very smoothly. It's in terms of the logistics, it's just a matter of processing the cases. Legislatively, my Prosecutors Association, has a very active legislative presence. We're watching a lot of bills, primarily related to some of the update things that are going on around law enforcement reform. There's a bill talking about creating a independent prosecutor for officer-involved shootings. And we're working with some groups on that bill. I'm not sure if that's actually going to go forward or not, but there's certainly a lot of discussion about it. And other than that, just watching a number of other criminal justice bills. We don't really have anything identified as a single priority this session. We're mainly just looking at the criminal justice reform bills as a whole.
John, the Blake and the law enforcement clarifications are both on our county's legislative priority list, our one page. So I think there's 6 or 7 items, and those are 2 of them. So we're definitely putting our emphasis there, and we've met with almost every legislator in the region to discuss our county priorities. Questions for prosecutor?
Commissioner, just to follow up on what John stated, Senate Bill 5663 is the one related to the Blake, and I believe that bill has significant amount of money. So tomorrow I will be working with the board to just go through all the many different bills, and this is one of them that we're going to be tracking. I asked Deborah Manguia to go ahead and sign in support of this bill from the county's point of view. So encouraging news. We'll see if the House has the energy to do that as well.
You know, one thing else I should mention, Romero, thanks for mentioning that bill, but some of that Blake money is being dedicated to set up infrastructure for this new behavioral health system that the legislature contemplates going into place to to provide support to folks who are dealing with substance use disorder outside of the criminal justice system. Let me get to the point. Our new LEAD program is rocking and rolling, and we just had a steering committee meeting a week ago or so. The numbers look really good. The number of referrals is continuing to increase. About 2/3 of those referrals roughly are coming in from law enforcement. And so they are really doing a terrific job of making those referrals and getting people connected to that program. So I'm just really, really excited about how that's going so far and what it looks like it's going to do in the future.
If I may, so related to that, John, as well, sorry to interrupt, just timely. We receive an additional grant to carry on the LEAD into 2023. And I have an item for board's consideration to approve that contract this coming Tuesday. So good deal.
Other questions for the prosecutor? Seeing none. Okay, thanks, John. Let's go to Jeff Gadman, County Treasurer.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody again. So things have actually been kind of quiet in the treasurer's office right now. We just signed off on the 2022 tax statements. So those will be in the mail on February the 9th for your pleasant little Valentine that I like to send everybody every year. Just to let you know I'm thinking about you. And that whole process of designing, we had to do a little bit of a redesign on the statements this year because state requirements on what we need to report changed a little bit, but that went smoothly. The process of getting them done went smoothly. We actually, for the very first time, hit 99.1% collections for last year, which is, we typically have been in the 97, 98 range. During the Great Recession, it went as low as 96.5, but 99.1, that's really good. So I don't know how much the stimulus money affected that. But we'll see for this year. I mean, typically in this county, our collections are very, very high. So we're really happy about that. We are in the process of beginning to purge 40 years of stuff out of the corners in anticipation of the move this summer. So we're concentrating on that as well.
Any questions for Jeff? Don't hear any. All right, thank you, Jeff. Mary, County Auditor.
So start with the office, I guess. Everybody's doing great, but we're crazy busy. We're just getting inundated with public records requests. And John Thunheim, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your staff. Karen is terrific. One of them led to a lawsuit. We're getting sued, so it's frivolous. They want forensic audits. So, but regardless, we have to fulfill all of these public records requests. Let's see what else. And elections is, of course, now struggling with how do we conduct this election and ensure that staff doesn't come down with COVID. So we're doing what we did in the 2020 election is we're creating two teams, Team A, Team B. They shall never meet. And my staff's pretty good about not going anywhere, especially without a mask on. So, and they all wear KN95. So, licensing and recording, there's an incredible license plate shortage that I never knew could create so many issues. So they're having to issue like paper plates, which later we have to match up with the actual plate. And it's hard for us, but our sub-agents are really struggling. One of them has a huge account with U-Haul that I'm really concerned that they could potentially lose, which is a huge amount of revenue to not only the county, but it's really what's keeping that or making that sub-agent successful. So challenges out of my control, which are never fun. Let's see. Finance is swamped. My financial services folks it's like they're doing two jobs. They've got their regular job, plus it's, trying to close out the year end, 13th month. And then we've got the ERP. So if you run into a financial services folks, thank them. Romero, I still owe you an email. I wrote it and then my Outlook went crazy. But everybody still has a good attitude. So grateful for that. It's been challenging for sure. We have a lot of legislation this year. A lot of it is good and requested. A lot of it is insane that we're hopefully just going to ignore because it's so off the wall. It probably won't get hearings. But there's a lot around security. I'm actually putting together a list for you, Ty and Romero, because there are some that are really important to us and probably don't know much about, like ending torrents. Torrents is a form of land registration. We don't have any in this county yet, but we've had efforts. In fact, I don't know if there are still efforts in the courts or not, but instead of just going to a title company and recording documents and having the title company be the kind of the keeper of all of that, it's actually a manual process with the auditor's office going through the courts, which is really antiquated and insane. So we're trying to get state law to do away with that. Looking to standardize our voters pamphlet. The funding bill required that every county create a local voters pamphlet, and we have inconsistent rules with the state also. One that's really important to us though is our voting center bill. It's 1716. And this is the one that would require that once we move to Tumwater, to the Mottman complex, all of our operations, we would have to have a voting center there and also in the auditor's office, which would be at the atrium. Well, where I'd rather put that voting center is in Lacey, but with 8 people, I don't have that many staff to have 3 voting centers and still do ballot processing at the same time. So trying to get that passed to where it would be more at the auditor's discretion of where we place these voting centers. So I wouldn't have to have a voting center at the atrium. But that, you know, people have already read things into that are not true. So we'll see where that goes. The other bill, and this came out of one of our public records requests, is to safeguard voter privacy. Currently, state law, you know, keeps private a person's email, phone number, and signature. In our voter registration records, those are not public information. But we got requests for copies of all of our ballot envelopes, which also contain that information for a lot of voters. So we did get an emergency WAC put in place to at least make it so we didn't have to fulfill that public records request, but we need to get that codified into law. So that's a really important bill for us also. There are a couple dealing with a new landscape for us, threats to election officials. It would make that a crime for, you know, threatening election workers, not just me, but, you know, anybody that works in our ballot processing center. So working to hopefully get that passed this year. It's already through the Senate, running into a couple of hiccups in the House. And then there's also a bill that's pretty controversial, but it would ban weapons from election offices and ballot processing centers. So we'll see if that happens. Of course, we're always trying to get rid of those advisory votes, which mean nothing and just cause our phones to ring with questions. And there's a lot more, but what I'll do is I'll put together a list and kind of highlight the most important things to the Auditors Association. Oh, and the other thing is there's it's a cleanup bill for when ports or the county would need to provide the auditor's office with new maps when they go from 3 to 5. I received a letter last year from the port that said, and it was quoting statute, that they would have their districts, their new maps to us on June 1st. Well, that's after candidate filing week. So that would mean a two-year delay on when they could elect those commissioners, because it has to be in a year where they regularly conduct elections. So Senator Hunt wrote a bill. It's a small cleanup bill, was heard today, and that should pass to where we get everything aligned, and boundaries would need to be presented to my office January 1st. So we have time to redraw precincts and move the voters into the correct district, because that has to be done really by March 31st in order to have enough time to bring it to you and for public hearings. So that's about it for now. There's a lot. Never dull.
Questions for Mary? That's a lot of legislative stuff.
Hey, Mary, do you happen to have bill numbers for the bill for the weapon in voting centers and the threat against elected officials?
Let's see, I was just sent a document. Let's see if I can find it.
I just wanted to track those myself too, so I can keep an eye on them.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
Senate Bill.
Harassment of election officials is 5148. And 1618 is prohibiting weapons. Harassing election officials is 5148. Which other ones, John?
Hope that those are the two. You got it. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Mary,
Mhm.
the weapons bill, is that very specific or is it broad? I mean, is it weapons at polling places?
It's
Or-
weapons at voting centers or any place voting can take place. So, or election offices actually, because it would be our ballot processing center and wherever voter registration or a voting center is.
Okay, so still going to be legal to point a firearm at my employees. Yeah, that's a great bill.
Steve, whether that's legal or not depends, but
Well,
Oh, yeah.
thank you. Yeah, it's gallows laughing for both of us. It's just a challenge, and it's not easily legislated a solution. So I commend your bill. I support it completely. I was just curious if I was afforded a luxury, and I doubt that it would have been feasible. So
Yeah, we've already been told that if it passes, it will be challenged in court. So, but that's okay. We're fine with that. I mean, it's the same as with courts, right? Or airports, or so we'll see.
Anything else for the auditor? All right, the picture switched around and Sheriff Snaza snuck in there to the next spot.
I could go last. I don't want to bore you all.
Yeah, you're good.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just a heads up, I have about 18 people out on COVID in the jail, 16 out in patrol. We've shut down our options center because I need to have the staff covering the jail aspect of it, and with the way some of the new programming has been working, and we don't have enough people to take care of both, so we're going to take care of the main jail first. I like the rest of all of you working on with WASPIC and doing some Waco stuff on some bills. We've been really looking at the use of force, reasonable suspicion bill, as well as when we can use force or when we can use reasonable suspicion to stop people. Most of it has to do with if a person's leaving the scene of where we believe a crime has just been committed, do we have the right to detain or stop that person to investigate if they're involved in it or not? And we had that incident happen out there in Bucota at Joe's place when they stole the ATM. We weren't able to pursue them, and they ended up stealing the machine. And we finally caught up with the stolen vehicle behind the Rainier High School. It took out a bunch of fences and stuff out there, and so we got that. And then they're working on the use of force with involuntary treatment. When we go out to a place where a person has mental health crisis, and are we allowed to use physical force to detain them, to have a designated crisis responder to see them and to assist them without not being charged with excessive force in detaining that person. So just a couple of that. I know that body cameras are going to be a big thing on Thursday, obviously tomorrow. And we're dealing with the fentanyl crisis that kind of what Gary talked about. We recovered in the drug unit, and John kind of touched on it. Let me just find it. It was like 167,000 fentanyl pills that we recovered just last year alone. When we talk about the Narcotics Task Force, just being mindful that you have one Washington State Patrol sergeant, a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 2 detectives from Thurston County, and you have a Homeland Security person there full-time. We have other full-time positions through the DEA or FBI or ATF, but they've all been kind of coming and going because of the lack of people in their own areas. And so we've done about 120 some narcotic cases just last year alone, or investigations. And so Thurston County is still a large hub for drug activity and criminal activity in regards to that. And I know that with the Blake decision, it's definitely impacting every part of our county and our communities. I met with Chief Amada last week and talked about the impacts of what their mobile outreach team has been doing. And he said that they've gone from approximately 70 homeless people down to about 17. So they are reaching out to people. And so we've been working with Mark Friedman and Joe Avalos, and we're going to have 2 teams that are going to be assigned to Thurston County. And they think they should be up and operating by April, which is a good thing for us. And we'll be able to, they're going to work kind of like a 4-10 schedule, working 4-10s, 3 days off, and they'll have overlap days on like a Wednesday or something, which will really help us out because that's kind of the way we do it on every other Wednesday. So the best part about that is that those 4 members are going to get to know a lot of our deputies and work with them, and we're going to get to know each other. And Chief Amada said that he recommended that we spend a little bit more than a month working with them so that they understand the intricacies of what we're doing and kind of what our expectations are, and kind of going through a lot of training aspects of what all of our expectations are and what we can do to help them out. We do have some new programs that are being implemented this year that have been approved by the board. We're getting our body cameras and our in-car cameras, but that probably won't be completed until about April, and we're hoping that they'll be in full use with policy and procedures by June 1. And we're just giving ourselves some time because of the COVID issue. So we're also getting 3 new programs for policy and procedure and making sure that we're all properly trained. One of the big things that's come up is that corrections, and I'm sure you all have heard me say before, that corrections now goes to a 10-week academy. So it's not 4 weeks anymore. So they're learning more about bias-based police training and de-escalation tactics while at the academy now, which is a big deal. And we're also seeing our new deputies learn the same. So we've got some really good changes happening at the academy, which is a positive. I know that last year in 2021, we did just under 160 background checks, backgrounds for hiring purposes. And let's see, I think we hired a total of 45 were hired, 13 of which were hired for patrol, and the others were hired for corrections. And then we had 59 fail the process, 46 withdrew, and we had 8 applicants just remain on the list. And with that, unfortunately, what it means is that we're still averaging about a 90% failure rate on our hiring, meaning that people aren't passing the background process, whether it's through just strictly the background or whether it's a polygraph or the psychological or the medical. But we're down in the jail. We're down, just got another resignation today. So we're down 8 corrections deputies in corrections, and we're down 6 in patrol. So I think we're getting pretty close to herd immunity in the sheriff's office, just based on how many people have either had COVID or have been exposed to it now. We've had a few of our deputies who have had COVID, have been vaccinated, who have been boosted, and have gotten it again. So, and we're talking about in the jail where it's a congregate care facility where they're mandated to be wearing masks 12 hours a day. And we're still seeing it. So it's really impacted the sheriff's office quite a bit. And that's probably, when I look at Romero, that's probably what affects a lot of our negotiations as well during this COVID time. So, but I'm available for any questions if you guys wish.
Questions for Sheriff Snaza?
Yeah, I just want to comment on the fentanyl, getting that off the street. That's 160,000 pills. Taking that off the streets saves a lot of lives, because a quarter of a pill will kill somebody. So that represents a lot of saved lives. So just want to put that out there. It's very potent.
Yes. We figured it takes 7 pills that equals a gram, is basically what it comes out to. So then whatever the multiplication is on that one is where you come up with the total weight of what fentanyl is. But I know that we got a request because the military wants to train their dogs in regards to fentanyl. We're not allowing that as a sheriff's office. I'm not turning over anything fentanyl related. It's going straight for destruction or go to the feds for their destruction or their purposes. One thing that I would add is that I was contacted by former Congressman Dave Reichert in regards to a rapid DNA testing component that I'll be applying for a grant, and what it will help us out. And I know that Gary and John would probably really appreciate it, is that you can get DNA results within 2 hours. And so it would help us clear up our unsolved sexual assault cases, maybe some of our homicides, or a lot of our crimes. But it's a process. The House of Representatives have granted so much monies a year to purchase these rapid DNA tests. I think it would really benefit at least Region 3, if not the entire west side of Washington State, if we were able to get one of those, that we could loan them out to other agencies to help solve some of their crimes with DNA as well. So I'm applying for that. I think I should have my letter out to Representative Strickland within the next week, or my request anyway. So that's all I got.
Anything else, Sheriff? No? Okay. I think we're on good time track. The commissioner just heads up, we do have a 1 p.m. Sharp with the North Thurston School District, but we've got plenty of time, 20 more minutes. So next, let's go to Superior Court and Judge Wilson, and we'll go to the assessor after that.
Well, hello, everybody. More internal discussions than external in terms of operations. And some of this is obviously interconnected to everything else that folks have said. Based upon Dr. Abdelmalik's recommendations, we suspended jury trials through February 11th. So we're not conducting jury trials. We started that the week of between Christmas and New Year's. So we haven't conducted jury trials since that time. Obviously, that adds to the backlog. We had a streak of conducting jury trials from March of 2021 without any interruption until Christmas time. So that was a big stretch and a bit of a setback, but obviously following recommendations of Dr. Abdelmalik. Also, she recommended that we tighten our remote hearings. So we have many hearings where remote participation supported both criminal and civil, but we relaxed having people come into the courthouse if that was easier for them. And we still, of course, have the open court so people can come, but we are strongly, strongly encouraging folks to participate remotely, and folks are abiding by that so that we prevent crowds in the courtroom. That's our goal. And then we have about half of our employees working from home, at least part-time at Dr. A's recommendation, and the ones that aren't are here to support our operations. Our operations, everything else besides jury trials, continue, but obviously interrupted by COVID. And, the sheriff knows this. He outlined really well what's going on at the jail with staffing limits and COVID cases that lead to quarantine. So even for the proceedings that we have scheduled, we often are facing where defendants incarcerated can't come into the jail booth because they can't move because of the quarantine restrictions from public health. So we're resetting cases, and nobody likes doing that, but obviously it's the situation we find ourselves in. We also have had judicial officers and staff out because of illness, and so we're continuing to support that and work through operations where that is difficult when we're short-staffed. We've behind the scenes been planning for the future. Misty, our court administrator, is leading us the first week of February in a strategic planning effort, which we are all really excited about, so we can make sure that our energies are focused on the right activities and plans for the future. In terms of backlog, when we can't do jury trials, we're trying to assign as many and schedule as many bench trials as possible. And so we have been using judge time at main campus for bench trials to help out family and juvenile court cases that otherwise would have to be continued. So that is good news in terms of addressing one category of our backlogs. And we're working, of course, with our partners on planning for the new referrals when they come with new staff, and then also when the jury trials resume. At someday, we hope to be doing jury trials in more than 2 courtrooms at a time, and we're developing plans for that when the public health recommendations allow us to do that. So those are some of our efforts. We, of course, we have 2 new judges that started in November and December, and we're working them into our calendar rotations and our bench trial assignments. And Judge Zip is going to be full-time judge, Judicial College next week and the week after. Judge Thomas, as commissioner, had attended many of those trainings, and so she'll be part-time Judicial College. We have a new full-time court commissioner that we swore in December at Family and Juvenile Court, who has the full assignment, Pamela Nagara. She's doing great. And then we have a few new staff, IT staff person who's doing really well, just joined us in December. So a lot of things going on. We had that power outage that was just a few hours, a week and a half ago, but I do want to shout out to the sheriff's folks and prosecutors and the clerk's office who's not here. Everybody rallied to figure out how we could finish our calendars, even though we had no power and no light. And corrections were really creative. We ended up doing our preliminary appearance calendar over at Family and Juvenile Court, which we had never done before. And our newest judge was on her 2nd day of in court and did some change of pleas with the lights off and the power off, but she was in one of the courtrooms that had daylight. And so we all said that, well, that'll be a good story for the future, that your 2nd day in court, you successfully completed calendars without the lights or the power. But it really was a team effort. And if the pandemic has done anything for all of us, it's taught us to be nimble and figure out an alternative approach when one thing doesn't work, rather than just say, well, we got to cancel court today. And so, that's the positive report. This Friday, the Bar Association is presenting the portrait of Judge Price to Judge Price. We're doing that by Zoom, although he'll be here in person. It's a tradition that the Bar Association privately gathers the funds and then pays for a judicial portrait, and it will hang in courtroom 203, where Judge Price was primarily assigned for much of his time here. So I think that's where I'll wrap things up, and happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Questions for Judge Wilson? Not hearing any, not seeing any. Okay, thank you, Judge. We'll go to Steve and Drew, our assessor. And Steve, if you, besides your group, you probably picked up that we're also asking if you had any legislative things you wanted us to be aware of. Make sure to highlight those as well.
Great. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. I'm sorry I was late. I'm on the phone with Assistant Director, Department of Revenue, discussing bills. It went long. It wasn't something I could cut off, but apologize for that. So we're having, oh, and I have a question because I missed the beginning of the meeting. So Commissioner Mejia, absent, is she well, but absent, or yes?
She's well. Yeah,
just got
she
a
was.
conflict. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. So let's see, I guess generally, situation in the assessor's office, we're doing our best to be nimble and responsive to this ever-changing challenge. We have about 25% of our employees working remotely at any given time. And then the field team is in the field. So it's actually ends up being more than half of our office is out of the office most of the business day. We're maintaining regular business hours. We are struggling though with our annual calendar and to get our work done, looking forward to getting our notices out on time. It's just every aggregate impact. I mean, the snow, for a change, it was just an abrasion to the arm, missing a couple days due to snow, because the aggregate loss of employee due to quarantine or illness is just, we can't get those days back. We are, we have authorized overtime to try to make some of that up. We have to do everything that we possibly can to get our work done as close to on schedule as possible. And so that's just presenting a real major challenge. We have had a challenge with test results. So, we have all of my employees are double vaxxed. Most all of those are boosted. We have 2 employees that are not vaxxed who are getting their weekly tests at the county's facility, and that's working smoothly, and they are compliant in that. The challenge comes from employees that want to rule out the possibility that they have COVID. We have a reoccurring problem of it taking a very long time to get test results, and not from the Kaiser system, but from the Primera, the other system that the county offers. And I had spoken with Maria Ponte. I'm hoping she spoke with Romero and Robin to ask for a couple coupons, a month to utilize the county's contracted testing. And I have not heard anything back, and I'm frustrated by that. We have a pressing need when we have someone who may have been exposed that's critical to our production to rule out the possibility that they have COVID and to do it timely. And the healthcare system is overrun. And our system is able to give us accurate, quick results, but I don't have access to it. I'd be happy to pay for it out of my budget. It's worth more to me and a better value for the taxpayers to clarify an employee's condition than to pay more overtime to make up for the loss of the employee. So it's an urgent request. And stemming from that problem, I have an employee that, like me, has allergies, has no fever, no shivers, no digestive problem, no headache, no malaise, no problem other than post-nasal drip and sneezing and clearing his throat. And I have another employee that's just is very, very concerned about that, and the appearance that we're doing nothing, because we won't tell that employee the status of the other employee's health, which we can't do. The only clarifying thing that we could do, the only tool that would solve that situation, is the ability to access the tests that the county has access to. And so please, commissioners, please work with the administration to help us have that solution. That's risen to an unsafe work environment complaint that's totally unjustified, but we're spending a ton of time to respond to that. And it's all because of the inability to get an exclusionary test. So help us there, please. We're excited about moving to the atrium where we'll be able to spread out more. We have a final design for our office and it's very functional and we look forward to that. Legislative wise, our priority legislation is an aerial imagery study bill. That is going very well. It's had its hearing and in the House and it's scheduled for hearing in the Senate. It will likely become a budget proviso with the study to be completed in the June of 2023. So we're aiming at a bill to create a statewide system for the imagery that our county uses and all counties use in the 2024 session. I think I have my years right, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And the idea is to use the OCIO, an agency at the state that does do some imagery, lower quality, and does recontract it out to local government and tribes and so on, but to do this much more cost effective. So to collect exactly what we're using now and to do it statewide so the planes aren't turning around over Lewis County and turning around over Pierce County and we pay for all that burn and time, but rather they're doing all of Western Washington in one process and then all of Eastern Washington in another process. And so that there isn't an overlay where different levels of government are purchasing the same imagery. You know, Olympia purchases their own flights, for instance. It's crazy, right? So it's an efficiency, good government bill. It's on a good path. Boy, there's a lot of bills to talk about, so I just will group them.
Stephen, the previous bill that you spoke to is the
Yes.
1629?
That's the House bill, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The House bill is sponsored by Lori Dolan. The Senate bill is sponsored by Sam Hunt. It gets a hearing a bit later. So I'll categorize. So there are a lot of bills that relate to ADUs, and many of them are problematic. And you know, personally, privately, the ADU is a huge solution in cities like Olympia and urban areas to affordable housing if it's not abused. So these bills seek to quell the unintended consequences, but they seek to do that in really cumbersome administrative solutions that can only occur in our office using skills that we don't have, using people that we don't have. So one of the blanket concerns, and it's in many bills, is that if you provide an ADU property tax exemption, that the ADU is then, instead of being used for affordable housing, is being used at market rate. And so there are bills that want to create a requirement that it only be exempt if the rental rate is some percentage of market rate. Good idea, but guess who gets to administer that? And it involves getting an affidavit from every ADU owner and verifying with the tenant. These are interviews we don't do. It's not part of our job. These are interviews that have to occur on weekends and evenings to catch people. We don't even have the renters in our database. We have no database of renters. So frustrating to see so many of those. And I've testified in so many hearings and have many, many ahead of me and over a dozen meetings with legislators on bills that really can't be fixed. And they don't like to hear that. The other category of ADU disincentive, a corrective bill, deals with ADUs being exploited for Airbnbs as opposed to, as they were intended, for longer term rentals. Admirable goal, but guess who that work comes to? And we also are not set up to interview and verify the length of rental in ADUs. And so it's a problematic bill. Whereas all the other incentives that they offer to ADUs, the impact fee incentive for counties that have that, the occupancy permit, the code exceptions, the no need for parking, all of those exceptions, they could be revoked at the strike of a pen by planning departments at the cities and the county if they violate the terms of the agreement. And those inspections would occur by project inspectors who are in the residences and are in dialogue. And so I rather think that neither of those solutions are functional and ever will be. And that really we need to focus the disincentive on the other incentives and either withdraw from having a property tax exemption altogether, or just accept that you can't make it perfect because of the administrative burden. So one of the categories of bills I was talking with Department of Revenue on. And there's another bill that's a significant concern to us. It creates a PILT, a payment in lieu of taxes, and does that only for solar and wind projects above a certain size. And there's no reason for it. That is, there is a system for taxation of those projects. And a PILT is labor intensive, and it confounds the levy process and the budget calculation process. And it's coming completely from the industry. And I have my third meeting on that stinking bill later today. It's a huge time sink. So hopefully that goes away. And then there just are a ton of property tax bills this year. And the thing that most all of them have in common is that they are heavily administrative, create a significant administrative burden. And we'll be successful in some places and not successful in others. In the ADU case, we were successful last session. We split standalone ADUs and the bills that were changed to simply exempt the standalone ADU and not the integral ADU, which requires that we do internal inspections, which we don't do. And yet the bills are back this year to add that to the other bill, So just a lot of effort and a lot of education of new legislators and even staff. And yeah, I think that when assessors paid less attention and there wasn't as much pressure on property tax as the solution, the person that had my job spent less time at it. Presently, last week, this week, next week, it's about 70% of my day and evening and weekends. Martin Luther King Day was not a holiday. It was a legislative day. And so I do sort of enjoy it. So I'm not, there's no tears, but it's been sort of all consuming, that and COVID. From a staffing standpoint, we are fully staffed.
You got 30 seconds, Steve. We're almost out of time.
All right. So for staffing, we're fully staffed, and that's in good shape. I'll just close and say, please expedite a solution to the testing problem. I'm in dire need of it. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank everybody. We're out of time. It was good updates. Good to see everybody again. And hopefully we'll be able to reconvene next month on schedule. Until then, we're adjourned.
All right. Bye, everybody.